All right, cool. So what we wanted to talk about today is educating your buyers and sellers, actually, because right now there's a lot of concern in buyers and sellers about how to operate and whether there's a lot of fear. Should I buy in this market? Should I not buy in this market? So what I thought I could share with you is some information that would help you understand if this is, or to help you be able to share information with your buyers and sellers so that they can be in a position of strength rather than fear. So let's get started with some data, right? So right here, you'll see that the NerdWallet home buyer report says that 67% of people expected an imminent housing crash. And 61% told them that mortgage rates are at unprecedented highs, meaning they're numbers that have never been seen before. And you all know, if you've been doing this, that that's not true. And 57% feel that their ability to buy a home in 2023 is worse because of higher rates. So what we're going to talk about is how, what do we really think about what's going on in this market? And do we believe that mortgage rates are at an all-time high? And do we think it's harder to buy a house? The first thing we have to make sure is that you believe that this is a good time for your buyers and your sellers to be taking action in today's market. Because if you don't believe it, it's going to be hard for them to believe it too, right? So number one thing is to help make sure that you're on board with it. So what you'll see is that, again, according to this home buying report, 83% of those polled say that buying a home is a priority to them, and that nearly 28 million plan to buy a home, but only 6 million did. And 70% planned to buy a home in 2022, but failed. And they failed because their offers weren't accepted or they couldn't find affordable homes. So it's a shame. That means that the demand is there. People are interested, but they don't know how to make it happen. Of course, inventory is something to contend with, but of those that qualify and those that are available, it's also having the right information, right? And I won't go too deep into this, but this is just an example of why folks are scared of the housing market. That's because the news tells them to be scared. And we know that the news tells them that because, well, fear sells, right? So you can see a timeline of all the different predictions, just going back to 2015. And if we were to start there, and if I won't go through all the details, but if you go to the bottom, if somebody listened every time starting 2015 and did not buy a house because of fears of housing bubbles and how homeownership doesn't build wealth, they would have lost out on $222,000 in appreciation in that time. So clearly there is a misinformation out there that we have to overcome. Now, the other piece is, why are interest rates where they are, right? One of the things that people don't know is that inflation drives mortgage rates. So inflation generally, if you look at these charts over years, they mimic inflation. Now, there was a little period that you see that I have the little white bar where it didn't match. And that was because the Fed did something called quantitative easing. So they artificially brought down mortgage rates during that period because they believed that the inflation was transitory at that time, which turned out not to be the case, but that's a different story. So then we take a look at what's going on with inflation. And I won't go into too much detail, but inflation is expected to come down at this point. We saw a nice report this morning from a consumer price index, and it came in just a little bit lower. So as we keep seeing that, then we will start seeing changes. Now, there are other things going on in the market right now, such as the bank collapses and the debt ceiling issue that we just had with the federal government. So all those are pulling mortgage rates in directions other than the way they should be going, which is with inflation. So there's a little tug of war going on, but we know that just like in any tug of war, it goes back and forth, but one side pulls. So inflation will end up prevailing and driving the interest rates lower as it gets lower. It's just a matter of these other factors temporarily pulling it the other way. And what we see is that Fed rate hikes, typically impact mortgage rates, but not directly, but because they're impacting inflation, okay? And so we know that a recession is on the horizon, and we have so many people right now, Americans, that are living off credit cards and depleting their savings. So even for your sellers, this is an opportunity If you've seen my Instagram or Facebook, you'll see I just did a video on this within the past week, helping sellers realize that there's an opportunity to get into a new home, even if they feel they can't because they've got a really low interest rate. So many Americans have a lot of credit card spending right now, and they've depleted their savings. And if you're paying attention to credit card interest rates, they're really high, well over double digits, even like into the 20s. So if that's the case, and they have a lot of debt, they also have a lot of equity in their home, we have the opportunity to potentially help them sell their home, leverage their equity to buy a new home, and their overall housing payment or their global housing payment could still be lower, even if they have a higher mortgage rate and a more expensive home. But folks are so single-minded, if you will, not intentionally, but that's the way they've been taught, to only focus on the interest rate on the mortgage versus the mortgage. But if we take their global housing payment, there is an opportunity for you as an agent to help create inventory by helping them have a conversation. We can talk to them and talk about their global household expenses and how we could potentially bring it down, even if their interest rate is higher. But all of this, is partly that's part of the message. And the other part of the message is that a recession is on the horizon. And with a recession on the horizon, because we have all these people with credit card debt, no savings, that means that we would see that mortgage interest rates would come down. And even though there's a recession, it does not mean that the housing market crashes. This is an example. I'm sorry. This is showing why there's a recession coming. Sorry, but the next chart that I have, oops, here we go. This is the one I meant to show. Shows that how mortgage rates and recessions go. You will see these shaded bars are recessions, and every time there is a recession, mortgage rates have come down. And so we fully expect that as we go into a recession, mortgage rates will come down. And then, here, some examples. I've got some numbers in here for you to show what's happened at each recession. And then here's what happens with recessions. Again, the gray bars are the recessions, and this is the National Housing Price Index. Even with a recession, housing prices go up. Now, this is important for you to know, to educate your buyers on and sellers on this information, because they are hearing don't buy, they're hearing inflation, they're hearing recession, they're hearing these things that are scaring them away from the housing market. But there's historical data that suggests that the housing market continues to thrive in these circumstances. Mortgage rates should come down based on recessions. Inventory is expected to remain low. So waiting until interest rates come down is not going to help the situation for them. And here's another reason why inventory is expected to be low. These blue bars are household growth, and the orange bars are annual completions. So household growth means like you and I don't live together anymore, or I'm your daughter, I don't live with you anymore, I start my own household. That's a household formation. So those, as you can see by these blue bars coming up, are growing, but annual completions of homes has not grown. So we will continue to have a supply issue. So waiting is not going to help people get homes at better rates or anything like that, or make them more affordable for them in that way. And a lot of folks do have, as I said before, interest rates that are really low. Sub-4, more people than ever in the history actually of the mortgage industry have interest rate this low. So it's hard for them to want to leave it. And that's where that equity transition planning that I spoke about earlier could really help them out. So we want to think about that piece as a place to go. And here are reasons why today's market is nothing like it was 15 years ago. Again, I won't bore you by going through all the details, but know that all the key factors like job cuts, total jobs, the number of subprime loans, mortgage delinquencies, foreclosures, all those things are not what they were when we had the last crisis, if you will. So no reason to think we should be in another crisis now. And this is, if you need any of these charts to help educate your clients, I'm happy to share them with you. And here is the reason also that housing market is such a great place to be. This is a chart that shows the rate of appreciation starting from 1940. So what is that, about 7 decades? And you can see mostly green in here. You can see just a little bit of red during the 2008 crisis, but other than that, the other one was a -1 and a 0, so still not negative. So housing is always a good bet for buyers. So this is always a good place for people to want to hang out, if you will, and invest their money. And most Americans have about 70% of their net worth in real estate. So it's a way for people to grow their net worth. And we have the ability to help people do that if we can educate them and help them from being scared of the market. And then, so this is just a change in what's happened in median sales price. And you can see that it is still growing is the main message here, right? Again, even though people think that it's been bad, it's still higher than previous years is the message of that slide. And home buyers' mortgage payments are actually higher. So affordability is in fact an issue. But, you know, it's something that we just have to contend with and know that according to ADP, annual pay is also expected to be up. So there is opportunity today to be able to move forward and still buy a home. And I'm just going to jump past this, but we're thinking that home affordability will continue to improve as inflation trends down, and then that would drive, in fact, mortgage rates down, and then income would increase according to ADP. But again, household supply is expected to remain low because of there's not a lot of new construction and there's more household growth than otherwise. And interest rates rents are going to remain elevated, right? So we'll have that. So rent still, and owning versus renting is still a better option. And you've all heard it. When you rent, you're paying 100% in interest, right? So even though it may seem it's a high interest rate, 100% is higher than any rate they'll pay on a mortgage. And they're expecting that interest rates will come down by the end of the year. So, whoops. So now let me shift to something here that would be helpful for you to have. If you are able to share information with your clients, very customized, just show them what is going on in the market, you might be able to help them understand why they might, give them information to make an informed, educated decision about buying versus renting. So we can help put together these real estate report cards for any of your buyers. We do them with when we do the consultations up front, and we find that it really helps them see why it makes sense to buy a home and why they should, in fact, buy a home many times. So with that, I'm going to just shift gears a little bit now, okay? And what we'll talk about is how do we get offers accepted, okay? So I'm going to share a different part of my screen now. Okay. So now we know that they should buy a home. The question now is, how do they? Because, hey, I get it, Pinky, you're right, I should buy a home, but it's madhouse out there, right? Offers are getting rejected left and right. How do I get mine accepted? Well, by bulletproofing your buyer, right? So what we want to do is bulletproof buyers. And the way that we do that is by executing upfront market analysis that helps them really get a sense of what's going on, kind of like the data that I just shared with you, to help them feel confident in what's going on. And then we prepare for an appraisal gap strategy before they put an offer in. And that's assuming they have enough to be able to do that, but we'll show them ways that they don't necessarily have to bring more money to the table. And I believe many of you have seen me do this analysis before, so you know what it's about. And then this has really been so critical and helpful, is obtaining a fully underwritten approval. So instead of just a regular standard pre-approval, getting them fully underwritten. Because now we can remove some contingencies, right? We can offer faster closing times. We can give the seller and their agent a lot more confidence in this prospective buyer. And most of you know this, but I will call the seller's agent when offers are put in so that they understand the confidence. And I have great successes. In the past 2 weeks, we have 3 offers accepted due to our role in the process. And they weren't all fully underwritten, but just because of the other things that we do about educating the buyer putting in a strong offer. We had a buyer waive an appraisal because we did it where they would not have otherwise. We had a buyer go up a little bit higher because I showed them the comparison. And then we had another one that just because they knew who I was, the seller's agent, they felt way more confident and they took our offer. And we had another one actually where we got a chance to counter that buyers, there was offers above 800,000 in this particular case. Our buyer came in at 783. I can't remember if they were pre-underwritten or not, but we had made we had started the pre-underwriting process. Yeah, so that's what I said. I did a video to the listing agent. I called the listing agent. Our buyer's agent got a call back and said, we really like your offer and your team. We'd like you to counter. We don't need you to go all the way up to the highest offer, but if you can just go up a little bit, we would love to take your buyer. And so they got the house at 780, 790, I think. So less than the highest offer, but still got the offer because of all this work combined with the great work that the agent did, of course, right? But our role certainly helped. So we can help do that. And then once we have them pre-underwritten, then they can submit an offer that's pretty much as good as cash, because now we can waive the loan contingency. We can offer turn times to close just as fast as buyers have, as cash offers. So those are ways that we can help bulletproof your buyer. And again, whether you work with me or you work with another lender, you really want to make sure that your buyer is working with professionals, right? In this market, more than ever, who they work with really, really matters. Again, that one offer, the listing agent took our offer because I was the buyer's lender on it. I referred an attorney to them because the buyer's agent asked me to. And so the seller's agent said, well, you've got Pinky and Kevin on this team. I'm in, because I know that two of them are going to do a solid job and get the deal done. And they didn't know the buyer's agent. It was a new agent. But they knew and had confidence in us to do our part. And we're closing in like 2.5 weeks on a jumbo loan. So everyone is super excited about that. So just to give you an idea, those are the things that can be done if you're using all your forces and able to do everything to really make your buyer stand out. And that's the key. Your buyer, we have to give them every competitive advantage possible. And so, yeah, I think I'll stop there unless anyone has any questions. All right, awesome.